So welcome, dear friends, to our Ahimsa Trust evening of mindfulness. And wherever you are from, wherever you are linking in from, I'm speaking from Dehradun. My name is Shantam, and we'll be having I'll be sharing a meditation on the inner child, which is coming from the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh in Plum Village. And then we'll be having Mala sharing a little bit about that, and Tina sharing the practice of touching the earth, and maybe a little meditation at the end. The practices of the inner child are very much to do with the understanding that all of us have a child in us, an inner child. We were all 5 years old at one point, and the practice we'll do today is seeing ourselves as a 5-year-old child. That 5-year-old child is still alive, and at that age, we're often very fragile, vulnerable. A strong word can hurt us, a harsh glance can hurt us, and that child stays in us and asks for attention from time to time in our lives. But often we ignore it. We, sort of dumb it down with some other distraction. We'll start watching something, we'll start speaking about something else, and we won't really acknowledge that inner child in us. So part of the practice today is to look at that, and then we can have a conversation with that inner child. So if you felt for the moment, if you recognize that child in you, then you can, when you go for a walk, you can say, oh, let's go together with that inner child. When you want to watch a sunset, you can do that with your child. So that's a sort of practice that we're doing. It's a way of developing some sort of understanding of yourself and maybe understanding of your own deeper suffering. But the interesting aspect of this practice is also to realize that it is not just you who has been a 5-year-old child, but also your parents. Both your mother and your father were at one time obviously 5 years old. And we are not used to seeing our parents as 5-year-old children. That's not what, we've never seen them like that. But to recognize that they also may have been receiving some sort of seeds of suffering, some sort of, as I said, harsh words, a different type of, toxic environment they may have lived in. And so those aspects of their suffering, of their personality carried on through their lives. And they could have been transmitted to you too. So I think the practice today is really to look at that, both in ourselves and in our parents. I know it's a short time, but we will do it, and then you can, of course, do it later. So let's start now. I will offer another sound of the bell, first guide you into a little bit of a practice of shamatha, of calming, and with the breath and body, and then move into this practice. I feel that it's a practice that allows sometimes reconciliation with our parents also. Sometimes some people are very angry with their parents. And this is a practice that allows us to see our parents and that the seeds of suffering that may have been watered in them too. So let's just enjoy this practice. As we know that meditation is the food of joy. So even if you're looking at situations which are not so easy, we keep a demeanor and a mental state of well-being, not of depression or a sense of heaviness. Yeah. So enjoy our practice. So, dear friends, find a comfortable posture, a posture that allows us to be stable, to be grounded, feeling our body to be in a sense of like a mountain, just being in this one place. And having an upright posture, feeling our spine with its light curvature, upright, alert, not stiff. Feeling our spine reach up into our neck, into our head, and imagining an invisible thread holding the top of our head from the sky. Feeling our body in between the earth and sky. Sitting in a dignified way. If you're sitting on a chair or on a cushion. And relaxing our body. Relaxing the shoulders. You need to move the shoulders back a little bit. Roll them. Just relaxing the shoulders. The arms. The hands. The back. The hips. Relaxing the muscles in your thighs. In your lower leg. In your feet. Just feeling a sense of ease and relaxedness in the whole body. The chest, abdomen. Just feeling a softness in your abdomen as you feel the rise and fall of the abdomen with each in-breath and each out-breath. And feeling the whole length of the breath, from the beginning of the in-breath, to the end of the in-breath, the beginning of the out-breath, to the end of the out-breath. And offering ourselves that gentle half smile of awareness, the awareness that we are alive. We have this miraculous breath of life. And with the smile, you feel the muscles in your face relax, a sense of well-being. Seeing myself as a 5-year-old child, I breathe in, smiling to the 5-year-old child, I breathe out. myself 5 years old, smiling. Seeing the 5 year old as fragile and vulnerable, I breathe in. Smiling with love and compassion to the 5 year old in me, I breathe out. Seeing myself as a 5 year old, fragile and vulnerable, smiling with love and compassion. Seeing my father as a 5 year old boy, I breathe in. Smiling to my father as a 5 year old boy, I breathe out. Father, 5 years old, smiling. Seeing my 5 year old father as fragile and vulnerable, I breathe in. Smiling with love and understanding to my father as a 5 year old boy, I breathe out. Father, fragile and vulnerable, smiling with love and understanding. Seeing my mother as a 5-year-old girl, I breathe in. Smiling to my mother as a 5-year-old girl, I breathe out. Mother, 5 years old, smiling. Seeing my 5-year-old mother as fragile and vulnerable, I breathe in. Smiling with love and understanding to my mother as a 5-year-old girl, I breathe out. Mother, fragile and vulnerable, smiling with love and understanding. Seeing my father in me, I breathe in. Smiling to my father in me, I breathe out. Father in me, smiling. Seeing my mother in me, I breathe in. Smiling to my mother in me, I breathe out. Mother in me, smiling. Understanding the difficulties that my father in me has, I breathe in. Determined to work for the release of both my father and me, I breathe out. Difficulties of father in me, releasing father and me. Understanding the difficulties that my mother in me has, I breathe in. Determined to work for the release of both my mother and me, I breathe out. Difficulties of mother in me, releasing mother and me. So, dear friends, you may want to massage your face, your legs a bit. So this is a practice that we can do again every day. We don't, as we said in the beginning, see ourselves, see our parents as 5-year-old children. But often we find that some of their suffering may have been transmitted to us. So nice to spend 5-10 minutes with our own 5-year-old child, maybe the 5-year-old of our parents or our mother or father in us, and helps a lot with understanding where they're coming from, their own vulnerabilities, their own fragility, and their difficulties, and how they are transmitted within us too, and how we can transform it. That is what is wonderful about this practice, that we have a chance, that we have met a practice, teachers who can help us transform these. Maybe our parents didn't get that chance. So to have compassion and feeling of love and appreciation, but also not to realize that, things that have been very much hidden inside us, not allowed to be expressed by ourselves. We can look at them and say, hello, 5-year-old, how are you today? 7-year-old, and maybe spend some time with him or her. It's wonderful. So I'm going to invite one more sound of the bell and then invite Mala, who is a friend who teaches in the Noida Sangha, and sharing maybe whatever she wants to share. But I think in this context of the mother-daughter probably, or relationship, or father-daughter, I'm not sure. So I'll invite one more sound of the bell and then invite Mala Tandon to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shantam. Some weeks ago, I was hearing a talk by Brother Fapai, and he had said that, the path is circular, it's not linear. And you always come back again and again to the starting point, and each time you come back, you have a new insight. So 2 days ago, when Gitu called me and said, would you like to share, about this meditation of seeing your parents as a 5-year-old? I said, yes, of course. And then promptly my mind completely jammed. It was so bad that at night I didn't sleep. And then in the morning when I woke up, I sort of asked myself, what am I resisting? What am I resisting? And I realized that obviously something that I had thought I had sorted out in my mind, the pain of the relationship with my mother had come up in the mind again. But I think somewhere, to be honest, my heart was not completely clear. And I still held her responsible perhaps for the way I am. And at the same time, I think thanks to the practice, the thought came up that, is this the right view? Is this the right view to hold? And so I'm here. It's going to be a difficult sharing, and I request you to just hold me as a Sangha. It so happened that in 2002, 24 years after we were married, we had to bring my mother home to come and stay. Some relatives, she was a widow by then, and some relatives had started taking advantage of her being alone. And my brother and I decided that she can't live alone. She'd become extremely ill trying to manage with them in her very small means of income. And we decided to bring her home. And when my father had died, I was just married. We didn't have the wherewithal to really share anything with her, and I don't think I was really mature enough to even help her at that time. So I kind of looked at this opportunity as an opportunity to give back to her, because I couldn't give to her at the time when he died. But I think my mother looked at it as captivity. She felt complete loss of independence. She would reject every effort we made to make her comfortable. She was extremely critical of the way I ran the house. I mean, my daughter couldn't be good enough. My husband wasn't good at all. And it was extremely, extremely uncomfortable. And she was constantly complaining, and I was constantly trying to tell her, why don't you try this? Why don't you meet this? Why do you think like this? And I mean, the long and short of it was we were not listening to each other. That was, completely clear. Sometimes I would come back from my workshops, which were out of town. So I would be out for 3 or 4 days, and I would come back and realize that she's changed all the instructions to the staff, the way I ran things. She just had to have her way. I realized that. And if I confronted her, she said, well, I'm a rebel, do what you like. So I was really up against a barrier, and I felt I can neither cross it nor can I see through it. And I was really miserable, really miserable. Add to that years of menopause, and you can see a volcano erupting every single day. So the distress just spilled over, to my husband, to my daughter. Our family equations changed, and it was a problem to keep the staff. I mean, it was misery for everyone. But I think every time this volcano erupted, I know that my heart would break. This is not how I imagined it. And I think the reason is that I couldn't reconcile what I was seeing, the reality of what I was seeing of her, with the reality of what she was when I was growing up. I mean, she was full of beans, she was full of practical jokes. We would always be doing fun things together. She had a huge ability to sacrifice, to put herself aside for my father's ambitions. But she was also very generous. He had a very low salary as a government person. She was extremely generous, and she groomed a whole generation of officers and wives, to work and to live in big cities. We had relatives in the house all the time. Sometimes the relatives were from the village, and she made sure we respected them. And she was the go-to person for all my friends, all the relatives. And just to give you an idea of how well she was loved, for her 80th birthday, we had a party. We invited 150 people. And Bobby asked me, he says, any cancellations? And I'm, no, nobody is canceled. They all wanted to be there because they loved her so much. And there were these two completely contradictory images. I just could not reconcile what was happening. Anyway, then 2011 was a difficult year for her because she had two fractures in quick succession, and within 6 months, a crack in her spine. Extremely painful. And I think painful because her freedom was completely restricted. And of course, although I was the main person looking after her, but I was also the face of her misery. And the suffering was manifold. I mean, from her point of view, of course, but even for me, because I felt continuously, she was touching the seed of rejection in me all the time. Whatever I would do was never enough. I do remember in 2012 at IIC hearing Shantam speak with somebody else, and I'd recognized him from the talk we had attended in 2008 when Thai was there in Sector 15A Club. And I was just bursting with this, not being able to reconcile things in my life and not being the person that I would have wanted to be. So I went to him on the side and I asked him, I said, how does one actually control oneself? One knows one shouldn't be reacting, and yet, when something is touched, you just bubble over. Of course, he directed me to the Noida Sangha, and I found myself next week at Poonam Bajaj's house, where I think Rita or Tina were reading Path of Emancipation. I have no memory of what they read. I just know that I wept. And I think something was touched there in that reading. I actually, for the first time, admitted that I was suffering. Till then, I don't think I had accepted that I was really suffering. So obviously, there was a change when I came back home. I remember that I walked in, I was, feeling so light. Anything would be said, and I would be gurgling with laughter, which I hadn't heard myself laughing for a very long time. And also, when I sat in front of my mother, I thought, I'm listening to her in a very different way. It's not just through ears. I think something is going into the heart. Obviously, I felt a huge, space having developed somewhere inside. And I remember feeling that, okay, I found a way, perhaps, a ray of hope that something can change. So months of Sangha meetings followed, and of course, you realize everybody else is suffering. Different aspects are discussed, different viewpoints are discussed. And I remember Rita telling me once that be kind to yourself, Mala, you're already doing a lot, which I think made a huge difference. It made me view myself very differently. But then she also one day introduced the very meditation Shantam did today, which is to view your parents as a 5 year old. I mean, this was a completely new view. And I felt I was being called upon to really climb, take a leap onto a different vantage point and try and see things differently if I wanted things to change. So we do have a photograph of my mother as a 5 year old, incidentally. Very sweet white and black photograph in a little salwar kameez, polka dotted. She was very beautiful. She is beautiful. And I would often just stand in front of that photograph and try and visualize what would have been her life at that time. Well, she was the firstborn, very, very fair, beautiful, very bright, very intelligent, very sharp. I'm sure she was the center of my grandparents' attention. 3 years later, a son was born. And it suddenly dawned on me that perhaps their attention entirely shifted to the brother. It must have, I believe, left her very bewildered. As a 3 year old, how can you understand this when the attention just shifts overnight, away from you? And she must have wondered, is there something wrong with me? She must have felt completely abandoned. And this seed I felt of being abandoned was touched again and again in her life. Her one refrain always used to be, nobody cares. So things began to sort of, the jigsaw puzzle began to sort of, pieces started fitting in. And I thought perhaps as a 3 year old, what would you do to survive this situation? You would just have your way, come what may. You would become a rebel, won't you? How would you survive if you were not to just completely withdraw? One of her favorite stories of her childhood was that every Sunday, my father would take me in this rickshaw. We would go to the Sunday market, which was like a heart in those days, like you have in Delhi Heart. And we would buy this cane basket, which had clay toys, shiny clay toys. And I would bring them home. Then I would run upstairs on this rickety staircase, climb up on the roof, and throw them down one by one. And as a child, we used to laugh at this story. But suddenly, as an adult, when I looked at the story, I thought it revealed a lot of unexpressed anger. And perhaps she wasn't allowed to express it, because how can you, when you have a culture which adores, males and sons and brothers, you're not even allowed to express your displeasure. And sometimes I feel that her current claustrophobia perhaps is this repressed anger. I don't know. And then I think the breakthrough was actually a particular habit that she had, which would always irritate me, was I would find these little bits of food, you know, in the fridge, sometimes even in her cupboard, and they would have gone bad. They were rancid. And we would have this argument about, why do you keep this food away? And she would give me some nonsense. It didn't make sense. One day I just thought, okay, I'm upset, but I'm not going to react. I'm just going to pick up my cup of tea and I'm going to sit and concentrate on this image. It was just an image. And something of a question sort of arose in the mind. Is it possible that food was taken from her plate and put into her brother's plate as a 3 year old or a 4 year old or a 5 year old? I mean, my grandfather was just a subdivisional magistrate at that time. He couldn't have been earning very much. They didn't have any land and buildings, and pushton ka kuch bhi paisa nahi tha, because he had come from Burma as a refugee. And I mean, it went so deep that I just broke down. I mean, I broke down several times while writing this part, because, look at the immense unfairness and her vulnerability, her inability to fight back. I mean, this image just tore me apart. But also, I realized that as an adult, she didn't have that ability. She didn't try to separate herself from those circumstances, to see that she was just a victim, to see that it was a habit perhaps that she didn't have to hold on to. I mean, she just clung to that entire image and all the habits that it had brought. It really जैसे कहते हैं हिंदी में छलनी हो गया मेरा मन. It was just like a sieve. I couldn't handle it. But I did try and hold that image of this very vulnerable, very hurt child. Every time I started communicating with her, rather than a sort of battle. And for the first time, actually, I felt that this wall was beginning to crack, and I was beginning to see through something. Perhaps the wall was within me. I don't know. Things did improve in our communication there onwards. And in 2017, actually, I went to Plum Village, Thailand. And there, the practice of touching the earth caught my attention because I had done it in 2012 when we did the 5 mindfulness trainings. But I don't think I absorbed it because you're in a totally different zone at that time. And I realized that in the touching of the earth, there's this twin image that you carry. You realize that your parents' characteristics are within you, and yet you also are given a chance to let go of those characteristics which are not beneficial. This hadn't struck me when I had first done the touching of the earth, and all that I had pointed fingers at my mother for were in me. I mean, this was just so clear to me. It was clear as crystal. I mean, not listening, not being present for my loved ones, always running away from suffering, always losing myself in jobs, in my workshop, and a worldview that said stress is okay, suffering is life. Deal with it or don't deal with it. And the beauty is that of this practice is it reveals something to you, and then in one breath it gives you that out breath and you can let it go. It was one of the most beautiful moments because I remember raising my head and feeling, was I just born? Did I just take my first free breath? It was an amazing moment. But then, of course, Brother Fapniam doesn't leave you there. He talked about nourishing your joy every breath that he took, every lecture that he took. There was this thing about nourishing your joy. And I thought, okay, what he's trying to aim at is what Shantam has often spoken about, changing your channel. Don't remain in the negative frame of mind. Look at the clouds, look at a child smile, memorize some of your happy memories and don't remain negative. But by the end of the retreat, I realized Brother Fapniam was talking about letting go of your suffering. Let go of your suffering. How difficult that was. And how attached we are to our suffering. I mean, who am I to blame for being the person I am if I let go of my suffering? What about this immense self-pity that I have, which I'm sure at a certain level I must be enjoying? What about my raving and ranting? And what about hiding behind the I'm never good enough phrase? I'll never be able to do that. So it was a huge turning point, both these practices. And I came back from Thailand. I remember walking into the house and looking at my mother, and it struck me that I don't need a monastery, I have my Buddha at home.
Thank you so much, Mala, for sharing your story, heart, vulnerability. And we know when we feel that pity, that sense of vulnerability in our parents, we know that meditation is working, and how then we can transform that to an acceptance, a love, And so it's just also the very practical way of trying to see our parent through a photograph, something like that, where it's very difficult to imagine our mother or father as a 5-year-old child. But also finding that, realizing that our mother's in us. So very much as the practice we did, but to apply it is the main thing. One is just doing the practice and hearing it, but I think to live it, as Mala has just shared, is what is the yeah, that's the applied practice. That is the value for transformation and to live a more um, suffering-free life. And the practice that Mala alluded to, the touching the earth, is a wonderful practice where we which I think maybe Tina will share a little bit about that when she leads us to it. And she'll be leading us with also, we sometimes do what is called a prostration to maybe our land ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, our family ancestors. But if people are not comfortable doing the prostration, please feel easy to sit where you are and bow to whatever Tina leads us into. But if you do want to do a prostration, then I think some friends who will be doing it will be highlighted on the video also, so you can follow what they do. But basically, it's just a full prostration or half bowing. So I'm going to invite one sound of the bell as Tina comes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantam, and thank you, Mala, for that beautiful sharing and very deep sharing. Thank you. So the touching of the earth is the practice we'll be doing together. And if you like, and if it's possible for you to have a space in front of yourself where you can either do a half prostration, which Sheila, who is with us, will show us, or a full prostration where you actually go flat out on the ground with your palms, with your hands forward and your palms raised towards the sky. So if you can make that space available for yourself, that's wonderful. And if not, then it's fine. You can sit where you are and just follow me. So I'd just like to briefly say that touching the earth, as Mala also has shared, gives us an opportunity to contemplate what has been transmitted to us by our blood ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, and our land ancestors. And we practice this to celebrate the positive and to transform what needs to be transformed. So if we can begin by joining our palms in front of ourselves as a lotus, so slightly open. And I will read, I will invite the bell first, and then I will read one line of the first part of touching the earth. And I will then guide you, and I will tell you when we touch the earth. And when we touch the earth, we stay in the position we are as I read further and explain that particular touching of the earth. So if we are half prostrated, just stay down till I tell you to get up, and I'll invite the bell, but I'll tell you. And similarly, if you're fully prostrated, stay in that position till I tell you to get up again. In gratitude, if we fold our palms, in gratitude, I bow to all generations of ancestors in my blood family. Please touch the earth. I see my mother and father, whose blood, flesh, and vitality are circulating in my own veins and nourishing every cell in me. Through them, I see my 4 grandparents, their expectations, experiences, and wisdom have been transmitted from so many generations of ancestors. I carry in me the life, blood, experience, wisdom, happiness, and sorrow of all generations, the suffering, and all the elements that need to be transformed. I am practicing to transform. I open my heart, flesh, and bones to receive the energy of insight, love, and experience transmitted to me by all my ancestors. I see my roots in my father, mother, grandfathers, grandmothers, and all my ancestors. I know I am only the continuation of this ancestral lineage. Please support, protect, and transmit to me your energy. I know wherever children and grandchildren are, ancestors are there also. I know that parents always love and support their children and grandchildren, although they are not always able to express it skillfully because of difficulties they themselves encountered. I see that my ancestors tried to build a way of life based on gratitude, joy, confidence, respect, and loving kindness. As a continuation of my ancestors, I bow deeply and allow their energy to flow through me. I ask my ancestors for their support, protection, and strength. You may all now stand up with your hands folded. In gratitude, I bow to all generations of ancestors in my spiritual family. Please touch the earth. I see in myself my teachers, the ones who show me the way of love and understanding, the way to breathe, smile, forgive, and live deeply in the present moment. I see through my teachers, all teachers over many generations and traditions, going back to the ones who began my spiritual family thousands of years ago. I see the Buddha or Christ or the patriarchs and matriarchs as my teachers and also as my spiritual ancestors. I see that their energy and that of many generations of teachers has entered me and is creating peace, joy, understanding, and loving kindness in me. I know that the energy of these teachers has deeply transformed the world. Without the Buddha, and all my spiritual ancestors, I would not know the way to practice to bring peace and happiness into my life and into the lives of my family and society. I open my heart and my body to receive the energy of understanding, loving kindness, and protection from the awakened ones, their teachings, and the community of practice over many generations. I am their continuation. I ask these spiritual ancestors to transmit to me their infinite source of energy, peace, stability, understanding, and love. I vow to practice to transform the suffering in myself and the world, and to transmit their energy to future generations of practitioners. My spiritual ancestors may have had their own difficulties and not always been able to transmit the teachings, but I accept them as they are. Please stand up. In gratitude, I bow to this land and all of the ancestors who made it available. Please touch the earth. I see that I am whole, protected, and nourished by this land and all of the living beings who have been here and made life easy and possible for me through all their efforts. I see the Buddha, the mystics, the Sufi saints, Guru Nanak, and all the other known and unknown. I see all those who have made this country a refuge for people of so many origins and colors by their talent, perseverance, and love. Those who have worked hard to build schools, hospitals, bridges, and roads, to protect human rights, to develop science and technology, and to fight for freedom and social justice. I see myself touching my Adivasi ancestors who have lived on this land for such a long time and known the ways to live in peace and harmony with nature, protecting the mountains, forests, animals, vegetation, and minerals of this land. I feel the energy of this land penetrating my body and soul, supporting and accepting me. I vow to cultivate and maintain this energy and transmit it to future generations. I vow to contribute my part in transforming the violence, hatred, and delusion that still lie deep in the collective consciousness of this society so that future generations will have more safety, joy, and peace. I ask this land for its protection and support. Please stand up. In gratitude and compassion, I bow down and transmit my energy to those I love. Please touch the earth. All the energy I have received, I now want to transmit to my father, my mother, everyone I love, all those who have suffered and worried because of me and for my sake. I know I have not been mindful enough in my daily life. I also know that those who love me have had their own difficulties. They have suffered because they were not lucky enough to have an environment that encouraged their full development. I transmit my energy to my mother, father, my brothers, my sisters, my beloved ones, my partner, my husband, my wife, my daughter, and my sons, so that their pain will be relieved, so they can smile and feel the joy of being alive. I want all of them to be healthy and joyful. I know that when they are happy, I will also be happy. I no longer feel resentment towards any of them. I pray that all ancestors in my blood and spiritual families will focus their energies toward each of them to protect and support them. I know that I am not separate from them. I am one with those I love. Please stand up. In understanding and compassion, I bow down to reconcile myself with all those who have made me suffer. Please touch the earth. I open my heart and send forth my energy of love and understanding to everyone who has made me suffer, to those who have destroyed much of my life and the lives of those I love. I know now that these people have themselves undergone a lot of suffering and that their hearts are overloaded with pain, anger, and hatred. I know that anyone who suffers that much will make those around him or her also suffer. I know they may have been unlucky, never having the chance to be cared for and loved. Life and society have dealt them so many hardships. They have been wronged and abused. They have not been guided in the path of mindful living. They have accumulated wrong perceptions about life, about me, and about us. They have wronged us and the people we love. I pray to my ancestors in my blood and spiritual families to channel to these persons who have made us suffer the energy of love and protection, so that their hearts will be able to receive the nectar of love and blossom like a flower. I pray that they can be transformed to experience the joy of living, so that they will not continue to make themselves and others suffer. I see their suffering and do not want to hold any feelings of hatred or anger in myself towards them. I do not want them to suffer. I channel my energy of love and understanding to them and ask all my ancestors to help them. I return to the earth all the unwholesome seeds of my ancestors and those who have made me suffer, and keep with me all their wholesome seeds, their love, their compassion, their understanding, and their generosity. Please stand up. So thank you, dear friends. That is the end of the touchings, the 5 touchings of the earth.
So thank you, Tina. Thank you for sharing this very profound teaching in such a serene and beautiful way. I feel, again, this is another practice that we could do every day. We could even take one of the ancestral elements in our life, whether it's our land ancestors or our spiritual ancestors or our family ancestors, but also a way of letting go of our deep resentment to people who may have caused us suffering, understanding that they themselves have suffered, they may not have had the opportunity of being able to transform their own suffering, and as we did in the earlier meditation, to realize that they, as children, may have suffered, and that their parents may have suffered, and they may have not had the opportunity to really come across teachings to do this. And of course, to respect and honor those who love us, and the ones who are close to us. So I think these are important practices. These are, they seem very commonsensical in one sense, but on the other side, they're not easy to do. Sometimes we just need to create a little bit of time, just even 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day to do this. But they are very, very deep reaching, and slowly, as Mala was saying earlier also, it's a drip by drip, and slowly the bucket fills, the bucket of joy, and that's how this practice moves. So whether it's to do with the 5 touchings of the earth, or whether it's to do with the seeing our children, a 5-year-old child in ourselves, the 5-year-old who's vulnerable as our parents, and seeing them in ourselves, these are wonderful practices. And then we hear stories of transformation and personal practice, like we heard at Mala. It's a short evening of mindfulness practice today, but again, next Saturday, for those who join us on Saturdays, we will revert back to the morning practice. Once a month, on the last Saturday, or 4th Saturday, I can't remember, we do this evening, but normally we do the morning practice again at 7:30 every Saturday. But till that time, try these practices. I think what's important is that it's not just to do it once a week, but to really see whether something resonated in you, and just try and continue that for the week. Even just take one thing. Even, as I said in the beginning, taking yourself as a 5-year-old child out for a walk to see the sunset, and chatting with him or her, seeing how they're doing, or recognizing your parent in that way. Just something which is an interesting exercise to do, but an exercise of deep awareness. So thank you so much. I'm going to invite 3 sounds the bell, and then just actually guide us a little bit before that into just coming back to our breath and our body. So I'll invite 1 sound, and then as I will close, I will just invite us to come back to our breath and body and into the present moment. So again, just coming back to our breath, anchoring ourselves in the present moment through the breath. Feeling the gentle rise and fall of the abdomen with each in-breath and each out-breath. And allowing us to touch this miracle of life in this present moment. Being aware of our body, and stilling our mind to the breath, not making it a thinking mind, but a breathing mind. And as we enjoy each breath, each precious breath, we smile. And as I invite the sound of the bell, we also offer our gratitude, our merit for this practice. Practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. See you in December.
So, other friends can just stay on. We're going to have a circle sharing. I think it's fine. Even this is mainly our core sangha as well, along with the Dehradun sangha and with the Bargar and Jamun sangha. So, if anyone wants to stay on, please feel free to do so for circle sharing.